Executives saw promise in his good looks and chiseled physique. 2 weeks later, Eastwood signed a 6-month contract at $75 a week.
The studio figured if they had 4 or 5 guys and 8 or 10 women, they would try to develop them into being actors and give them bit parts in pictures. Because most of the executives were men, the guys didn't have much attention thrown their way, so you just sort of sat there in limbo.
As Clint waited for parts, he worked hard in acting classes. The quiet young man was intrigued by all aspects of acting, and he was intent on becoming a success.
We had every kind of class, horseback riding and fencing and dancing and you name it. He had such an intuition about things, Clint did. We had Charlotte Hunter's dance class. Charlotte showed us a dance step, and we all tried it. And I looked, and Clint was just standing there. We were all fumbling around and whatever, and he did it perfectly. He absorbed exactly what she was doing and did it. Quite unique.
6 months after arriving at Universal, Eastwood finally got a chance to show what he could do on screen. But his film debut in the 1955 horror sequel, Revenge of the Creature, gave little hint of any greatness to come.
Doc, didn't you say that among the lower animals there were no natural enemies as long as they were well fed?
Yeah, something like that.
Well, maybe so, Doc, but there were 4 rats in there when I changed my lights. Now there's only 3. It's my considered opinion that rat number 4 is sitting inside that cat.
Are you sure you fed them all this morning?
Sure, I always feed them. How'd he get in here?
Although Eastwood was still learning his craft, he was now determined to master it. After 1 year at Universal, he wanted more. Much more.
The 3 young men featured in this scene, Rex Reason, Grant Williams, and Clint Eastwood, were discovered and developed right here on our lot.
25-year-old Clint Eastwood struggled to stand out from other contract players at Universal. In 1955, he was pleased to get a national showcase on the TV variety special Allen in Movieland.
Well, Larry, how did you and the lieutenant get along?
Oh, just great. Sure. He had all sorts of solutions to my problems. Just like all the other people around here didn't know what he was talking about.
That's funny. You'd think he'd know something. He's as blind as you are.
Eastwood was finally committed to a career. He did walk-ons in everything from medieval romances to Francis the Talking Mule comedies.
He was always listening. He was a student when he did these little roles. It wasn't that he was excited, but more like he was happy to get something to dissect and then do.
But by 1956, the movie industry was in a state of panic. Television was slashing into big screen revenues. Studios were cutting back. And that year, Universal decided it could do without Clint Eastwood.
And they threw me out and got rid of me. And probably rightfully so, because they were getting rid of the whole program, but the program sort of disintegrated after that.
Frustrated, Clint searched for acting jobs. The best he could find was low-budget fare like The First Traveling Saleslady, in which he played Carol Channing's love interest.
It was a tough time. I mean, he basically made his living digging swimming pools and doing odd jobs. He and Maggie had hard times. It was kind of hand-to-mouth for them. I think they had fun. I mean, they had pool parties and cookouts, but I think with a certain amount of tension because of the economic pressures they were under.
I did a picture called Ambush at Cimarron Pass, an 8-day movie, had an 8-day schedule. And then when I saw the movie, I looked at it and I said, this is really awful. And so I thought at that time, you know, I had to go back to school. I got to do something else or get a job doing something else.
But Eastwood's rugged looks and laconic style were perfectly suited to the thriving genre of the TV Western, which dominated the airwaves. And it was television that finally gave Clint a break in 1958, when he was spotted by a casting agent at CBS.
And this guy comes up to me and says, "Are you an actor?" I said, "Yeah, I am." And he says, "Well, we're doing an hour Western here, Rawhide." So I came in the office, and I was very loose about it because I didn't think there was anything in it for me. It was like a lot of other interviews. I figured I'd flunk the interview.
Instead, Eastwood was invited to do a screen test. Days later, he won the second lead role on Rawhide, playing impetuous trail rider Rowdy Yates. Clint turned for advice to a friend who'd already succeeded in television, James Garner, star of the series Maverick.
He said, "Listen, they want me to do a television series. What should I ask for?" I said, "Well, Clint, I don't know what you should ask for, but I'll tell you what not to do, because I can tell you how I messed up. Don't get under contract and get lost in there." So he made a better deal.
Clint signed on for $700 an episode, but after several weeks of filming, CBS suddenly put a halt to Rawhide as it searched for a sponsor. Clint took no chances. Eager to work, he accepted a showy guest shot on Maverick.
I'd be much obliged if you'd be on that stage leaving tomorrow. Can I count on that now, Mr. Maverick?
I'm sorry to disappoint you, Mr. Hardigan, but I plan to stay another week.
I could have swore you weren't the sort to let a man suffer. Now I'm liable to do something bad.
He came in to do a character on there, and here was this tall, spindly, cowboy. And he did a great job.
Now you edge over a little bit, Mr. Maverick. I don't want to get a bill for that mirror.
For years and years, he'd call me Maverick. He learned his craft early and learned it well.
To Clint's relief, Rawhide finally premiered in 1959 as a modest mid-season replacement.
What Mr. Favor means is you can ride along with us.
Ratings were good, and Clint quickly stood out with his unaffected and appealing work. Critics compared him to a young Gary Cooper.
I'll put it blunt, you're slowing us down. I'm not about to let anything happen to Mr. Favor's herd, so give us air.
Tell him never to send a boy to do a man's job.
Is it me you're after? Is it?
Not you.
If it's Mr. Favor, you better start with me. Don't walk away from me. Turn around! Both of you, turn around!
Rowdy, we want to be able to reach water before dark, but we won't be able to if we have to stop to bury you.
Well, he was laid back and natural, almost like he didn't act. He had the courage just to say the lines, trusted himself in it. He sort of had that naturally in life, too.
I was just trying to take a peek at the new Thursday night schedule.
There's no harm in that. I wouldn't mind a little peek myself.
All right. Where do we come in?
Yeah, let me check. Then comes Rawhide. A new night with new action. This year, the intrepid Galahads of the Big Drive, they'll be driving up the old Goodnight Lovin' Trail in the company of such guest stars as Neville Brand, Elizabeth Montgomery, Dan Duryea, and James Whitmore.
Rawhide was just a gigantic relief. I mean, it was steady work, and it was a gigantic learning experience for Clint.
Rawhide attracted a lot of motion picture directors who maybe weren't at their prime, but they had done a lot of good movies. And you learn a little bit from all of them. It's a great training ground.
Clint Eastwood was now a television star. His face became familiar not only on TV screens, but in comic books and other merchandise. Eastwood had become a household name thanks to Rawhide. His increasingly mature presence helped power the formulaic show through 7 seasons. Clint was grateful for the work, but by 1964, he was eager to explore other trails.
He had to figure out what the next movie had to be the kind of man he wanted to be.
While the 33-year-old pondered his future in Hollywood, he received a surprising offer from Italy. Eastwood's agent asked him to read a crudely typed script from an unknown director with no track record named Sergio Leone. It was called The Magnificent Stranger, and it had already been rejected by James Coburn and Charles Bronson.
It was a remake of a picture that I liked very much, Yojimbo, a Kurosawa film that I had seen at a very small foreign movie house.